here on this Thursday, May 2nd. We're officially in the final month of the regular season for college baseball. I know this season has flown by. I got my guy with me, John Bollman, here to break it down. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Honestly, I've been sick all week, so it's not been fun. Monday, I could barely get out of bed. You know those days where you're so sick that when you're laying in bed, you literally can't even turn over because it hurts too much or it's too much effort.
I do.
That was my Monday. I went to sleep around like 11 o'clock on Sunday, and I played golf for the first time since last year, Sunday afternoon. So when I woke up Monday, I was like, oh my God, I can't go to work. I'm so sore. So I ended up sleeping the entire day, and I woke up at like 6 a.m. Tuesday. So that was pretty rad. So it's been a little bit of a weird one for me this week. But John, we're in the final month here, and this is really when the sport gets good, because June obviously is what everybody loves, and the people that don't follow the sport, the people that don't bet the sport, June is the time where they're like, okay, it's like March Madness. We're going to bet college basketball the same way, we're going to bet college baseball. And I feel like as great as June is, May is an important precursor, because now this is the time of the year where the teams that necessarily have been struggling the last couple months, this is where they're going to turn it on to see if they're for real, and a hot streak's going to carry them into maybe a deep run in the month of June. And vice versa, if you're hot and maybe you go cold, and that could really be a death spell for you, try to enter this NCAA tournament. But really, is there a certain team that you're looking on to turn it on? And then flip side, do you think a team that's hot is going to cool off?
Nothing that comes to the top of my head, but there have been, like you said, this is the time of year where these teams, go on these runs. We've seen these in the past couple of years. Like 2 years ago, Ole Miss and Oklahoma kind of come out of nowhere. Not necessarily come out of nowhere, but like start playing extremely well, and suddenly start playing that championship level baseball. Last year, we kind of saw LSU and Florida. They had been pretty good all season long. But we saw other teams get hot, like a TCU in the playoffs and regionals, and the rest just suddenly being able to hit everything. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, like you said, we've got a couple of conference series left now, and then we've got these conference tournaments, but certain teams don't seem to care too much about them. So it'll be interesting how we finish here.
Yeah, for me, I think two teams I'm really looking at in particular to finish hot. There's a couple on my list, but I don't want to spend all day on it. The first one I'm going to say is Oregon State. I think, I was really disappointed how Oregon State went into Cal and got swept. Their bullpen couldn't hold the lead. And they responded, although it was at home, and they've been significantly better at home than on the road this year, like a lot of college teams are. Oregon State was kind of struggling. And it's fair because their lineup hasn't really been healthy, fully together since late February, since the second, maybe even the third week of the season. But it was good after getting spanked at Cal. They come home against a pretty good Oregon team, and they take 2 out of 3. And they looked a lot better. The offense was silenced a little bit by some good Ducks pitching, but it was good to see them get going. And Oregon State's got a couple tough opponents on deck these last few weeks. So I think Oregon State is going to kind of snap out of it. They're getting healthy, get together, and start making that run, because this is a team that I think we both expect to be playing in the second, third week of June and pushing for a College World Series title.
Yeah, 100%. I like that one. They've been playing so well for so long that, suddenly they're playing fine right now. They're just not playing, unbelievable as they were to start the season. So it's funny that, we see that kind of stretch and we expect more out of them. But you're right. I mean, I think they're under 500 on the road this season, which, won't matter too much because they're going to have a home regional and likely a home super regional as well if they make it that far. But then we think about when they get to Omaha, I mean, obviously it's a neutral field, but at the same time, just playing away from home in general is a big factor. So I like that. Call out for Oregon State.
We definitely not only want them to be hosting a regional, but a super regional, because Corvallis is a big home field advantage. They thrive there. Historically, that's really where, their championship runs have gone through. And I think one more thing to add, they got to win the Pac-12. They're not right now currently in position to win, but they're certainly in striking distance, and there's a lot of time left. So I actually thought Oregon State might win the Pac-12 by 5-6 games. I thought they were going to run away with this. I thought we'd be looking at maybe this week at preseason. I thought maybe around this weekend is where they would have basically sewn it up and just kind of been, cruising through. But ultimately, it's good that they have to play playoff baseball basically for the final month, 5 weeks of the season. The next team that I'm going to mention, and they've been playing well, Mississippi State, baby. The Dogs, I think, are back after 2 down years. I was high on them coming into the year. I was high on them last year, and I was disappointed, so I had to double down. I think Mississippi State, they've had a lot of highs and lows. They've given up a lot of one-run games this year, especially on the road. So we might have been actually seeing this team as a top 2, top 3 record-wise team in the conference at this point if they hadn't blown so many leads. But I think the Dogs are for real, and I think they're going to be a big problem. And I think after beating Vandy last week, now they have Alabama at home. This is a series that they should win. The only series I really see them losing is next week at Arkansas, but then they come home to finish off with Mizzou. So they realistically could win 3 of their last 4 series. So this Alabama one is very big, and I think Mississippi State's going to get it done. It's going to be big for their momentum.
Yeah, I mean, they can finally pitch, right? We've seen them. They've still been able to hit the past couple of years. They've just had no pitching and no pitching depth whatsoever. And now they've kind of gotten that pitching and pitching depth back. And we know that that's what you needed to make it through a regionals weekend or a super regionals weekend. So they're definitely built for it.
Is Nate Dom ever coming back?
I wouldn't know.
We saw him come back a few weeks ago from injury, maybe a little bit too soon, and then he kind of got re-injured right after. They've been keeping it very quiet. I'm curious because that's a huge piece. Before he got hurt, the kid was pitching to like a 1.3 ERA. He was dominant. He was their Friday night guy. And the fact is that was pushing Jurangelo to be the Sunday guy, which is a huge, huge advantage because there's not a lot of teams even that make it that far in the college playoffs that have a really reliable Sunday guy. And that's Jurangelo, the way he's progressed. But, right now as it stands, Cal Steven as the 1, Jurangelo as the 2, and their bullpen has improved and has continued to improve. So I think, Mississippi State ultimately is going to be fine. So that's definitely one. If you haven't taken a piece of Mississippi State, I would definitely advise doing it now. I actually hammered the shit out of them over the weekend while the 100-to-1s were out there. And I think all those are gone except for one at Bet Rivers. So you could still find a little bit of the best number available out there. Okay, John, real quick before we move on to the Golden Spikes, do you have a team that you think has been playing well that's kind of going to fade over this final month?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, not really anybody specific. There are just teams in general that don't have the pitching. I think I would, and I'm just thinking of like Big 12 teams in general, because it seems like they usually have a lot of teams that sort of fade off towards the end of the season. Texas has been playing well. Maybe they fade a little bit. Oklahoma's been playing really well, but they don't really have the pitching. So maybe they're an option to fade a little bit as well, but nothing really off the top of my head. At this point of the season, we're kind of at this place where the rankings are pretty like legitimate. There aren't any frauds. We know which teams can win certain games, which teams can lose certain games. So I think everybody's ranked about pretty correctly right now.
I will say the one team that I have, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I've wanted this team to make a run for a long time. It's the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers.
I was just thinking of that.
They went 0-5 last week. So here's the thing. They were at home to the leading Sun Belt leader in ULL, the Raging Cajuns. Took 2 out of 3, which is a huge series. I'm like, okay, like Coastal Carolina was my team preseason to win the Sun Belt. Great. What do? They go to Creighton in two-game midweek series. They blow both of those games when they had a lead because the bullpen is terrible. And then they come home to play Troy, and then they get swept by Troy. And Troy's a good team, not taking anything away, but to not even win a game, you get swept. You go 0-5 on the week. They're out of the D1 top 25 rankings. I feel like, the lack of pitching has really caught up to them. But what's disappointed me more and is even more alarming is the fact that their hitting has curtailed so much. We haven't really seen those 10, 12, 15-run explosions that we've been accustomed to. We've seen a few 7, 8, 9-run games, but Coastal Carolina was able to get away with subpar pitching because they could outslug basically any team that they were going to play. And now that power is pretty much gone. So I hate to say it, but Coastal Carolina could be heading for a quick exit in the regional round.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that definitely falls under the mold that I was referring to as well, as these teams that don't pitch well, that have kind of been playing really well. But I'm with you. I wish Coastal would make a deep run, but they just never have the pitching. And it's so frustrating. I think I tweeted the other day. I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a baseball team like major league or college have this big of a gap between like the performance of their offense and the performance of their pitching. And that being said, like you mentioned, they also just haven't been hitting lately too. And, if you're being carried by your bats and your bats go cold, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough pill to swallow. Okay, so we got a quick comment here. Our boy Crutch, ECU. I mean, ECU's played great all year. They haven't really – they kind of just – they've been good all year. They had one hiccup at UTSA. That was a weird series. Trey Savage, basically, that was his only real bad start. But ECU's a hard one, Crutch, because the thing about them is they don't really play anybody. Their only kind of tests are in the midweek games, and that doesn't really give us any indication because they're not starting their best guys on the mound. And I think ECU is going to be good. I think it's a really tough place to play. It's a great home field environment for the Pirates. But it's hard for us because those conferences don't really tell you a lot about this team. I think their offense is a little bit better than what I feel like I may have expected, even though Jacob Starling's been kind of terrible. But their pitching has been that good. It's too early to tell. ECU at 25-1, don't really love it. So for me, I feel like maybe betting them round by round once we get there is probably the better approach. Okay. John, start me off here with the Golden Spikes. We've seen Charlie Condon. He hit his 30th home run the other day. I have a nice size investment on Condon to win the award. Cags was my preseason winner at 5-1. Aside from those two, do you see anybody like Bazana or Braden Montgomery or Jace Lavalette sneaking into the conversation?
I don't think so, because the conversation at this point, Condon's clearly been the best hitter in the league this season. He's by far. And that being said, the argument then goes to Cags has been an unreal hitter too, but how much does pitching also factor into the decision, right? It's kind of like the Ohtani versus, was it like Vladdy a couple of years ago in terms of the MVP talk? Like Ohtani's, not as good of a hitter, but he's pitching this well. So how much does that, equate when Vladdy's clearly been the better hitter, but he doesn't pitch? So I think it's the same idea here. But honestly, the season that Cags has had on the mound is unreal. Florida would be way under 500 if it weren't for him right now. Condon's got the hitting stats, but I think it's got to go with a two-way play in college. Have it being an effective Sunday starter and really being Florida's best starter all season. He would be a Friday night guy if they wanted to change up his routine. So, I think he's been the best player in baseball this year. Charlie Condon, I don't think you can go wrong, but at the same time, I would value, just pitching as well as hitting over the guy who's, just an incredible hitter.
So here's my thing. I mean, I've been saying all year, and I think people are crazy if they disagree with me, saying that Cag shouldn't be the number one overall pick for a generation that's obsessed with Ohtani. If Ohtani breathes, they lose their minds. Like, why don't people feel the same way about Cags? Like, there's mock drafts that have Travis Bazzana and JJ Weatherholt going ahead of Cags. And not to say that they're not great players, but Caglione has been unreal this year. He's only struck out 16 times. He struck out 16 times and he has 26 home runs. Can you imagine Caglione, a guy that hits 33 home runs last year, and who's at 26 right now, has only struck out 16 times this season? That does not happen. He's batting over 400. He's having a phenomenal year. But the thing is, I feel like the pitching has been solid, but it's not really statistically the improvement that I feel like we needed to see. He started out well, but ever since that Mizzou outing, it's been kind of bad to average. He went 1 1/3, 7 hits, 6 earned at Mizzou, 3 walks. Then at home against South Carolina, 5 innings, 3 earned, 4 walks. Vandy, 5 innings, 2 runs, 3 walks. And then last week at Arkansas, 4 innings, 6 hits, 3 earned, 3 walks. It's not been very special. I definitely think he's kind of regressed a little bit with the pitching. And I do agree he's very talented, but I still think he has a lot of work to do if he wants to really fulfill that two-way status as a pro. But the hitting has been unbelievable. And if we pair his unbelievable season of 26 home runs, 402 average, and 53 RBIs, it's not really even close to Condon's. Condon's got 30 home runs. He's batting over 460. The RBIs, Condon bats 2, so he's not going to get as many, but he's kind of in that same range as Cags, and he's got a legitimate shot here to be a Triple Crown leader if the RBIs get up there a little bit over the final month. And we might see Charlie Condon hit 40 home runs this year. That's a definite possibility. So I feel like for me, it's hard to ignore what Condon's done wire to wire. He's been legitimately the best player, or at least the best hitter in college this year. So, for me, I feel like it's a very large gap between Condon and Cags, in my opinion. I don't think anybody else will get it. But obviously, in my opinion, I feel like right now I'd probably put Bazzana 3, and then I would say Montgomery 4, Lavalette 5. Lavalette was one of my long shots this year, and I thought it was a great bet. I understood the fact that he probably wouldn't win because of multitude of factors. But I mean, dude, this guy's got 23 home runs. He's batting 322. If he ends on a hot streak, bats 375 with 32 home runs. I mean, that's a great season. That wins you the award in a lot of years. But I think it's Condon's award to lose.
Yeah, I will agree with you in the sense that when you say like everybody's losing their minds over Ohtani doing this two-way thing, and then we look at Cags, who's kind of doing the same thing, and people aren't losing their minds over it. Like, it is really weird. Like, I don't understand why he's not getting the same attention as like an Ohtani. But maybe because Brendan McKay a few years back didn't work out, and he's kind of like the last real two-way prospect college baseball has had. But I mean, who knows?
Remains to be seen. We have a couple comments here. Ryan Potter, thank you. Thank you for the show. Can UK steal the series versus Arkansas this weekend at home? I live in Kentucky, going to try and catch the game Sunday. Mason Molina's pitching. I think Mason Moore is still going. I have to double check that. Give me one moment, please. I feel like Mason Moore's on the mound this weekend. Where are you? Yep, it's Mason Moore. Yeah, I would definitely try and catch that game if you can. I don't want to spoil it because we're going to save that game for last. We're going to get to that game, so don't go anywhere. But we're not going to save it for last. We're going to save it though, so stay tuned. Kyle Hardy, would you match up Savage for Tuesday against Duke? Maybe let him go 1-2 innings Friday and have him pitch for a much bigger game. Personally, Kyle, I wouldn't, and the reason is because this doesn't really mean anything to ECU at this point. they're basically locked into a top 10 seed unless they completely crumble. I think they have a really good shot to get an 8 seed, which would be good for the regional and super regional host. I think their biggest threat right now is Florida State. I think Florida State's biggest threat is the biggest threat to ECU in order to grab that 8 seed. Because right now I would probably have ECU as the 9, Duke as the 10. So really, it's not a big difference between 9 and 10, of course, depending on who you match up with if you make it out of the regionals and go to the supers. And then Crutch, Brendan McKay walk. So Cags can run. Johnny B, spot on with that one. Let's get to our first game here. Started out a little light. NC State Wolfpack at the FSU Seminoles. It's a big line here for Florida State. Jamie Arnold on the mound. He's been probably one of the 5 best pitchers in college baseball this season. John, you're not going to lay 250 with Florida State, but how would you approach this game?
Yeah, I definitely like them in a money line parlay. I was looking at other options, haven't figured out my favorite option yet. We might get into some of the other games, but thinking about like an Arkansas or an Arizona maybe. But FSU behind Jamie Arnold has been solid all season. I don't know if they've lost mine. Just that Clemson game I want to say, which was
Wake too.
Wake. Okay, so they have lost a couple games behind him. But I mean, the bullpen. We could say the bullpen lost those games, not Jamie Arnold. But NC State hasn't, like, I don't think NC State's very good. They just randomly will put together a good series. And it kind of just, if anything, throws us off in our perception of them, at least me. But I don't think they're very good. I think Florida State wins two out of 3 games this weekend. Do you know if Cam Leiter's back or when he's going to be back?
I haven't seen Cam Leiter scheduled for this weekend. I'm not totally sure. But I have been reading that Cam Leiter is going to be on his way back. He's soon.
Okay. Yeah.
I think they're working him back. Yeah.
If he was in the rotation, I would say FSU could definitely win 3 here, maybe sweep the series pretty easily. Without him, I would say they're more likely to win 2 of 3. They could still totally sweep the series, but I definitely think they're less likely.
I think so too. I actually have Florida State in a money line parlay. I think this is really the territory where they can't afford to dick around. I think they need to keep winning these games because, if I'm Florida State, I'm not looking for the 8 seed. I'm looking for 6, 7. I mean, I don't think they'll get down to 5. Maybe they will, but I think I'm looking for 6 or 7. Really, you don't want to leave it up to chance when you're in that 8 seed territory. Stupid little things like RPI, SOS come into play of like, okay, should East Carolina actually be the 8 seed, or should Duke? Is Florida State really deserve the 8 seed? They blew a lot of leads. Like stuff like that is going to get factored in. So, they need to keep that up and keep moving. We do have another comment. So are we fading Coastal this weekend? We'll get to that one too, Joseph. We have that one on the docket this evening. And then Crutch, Tennessee, Florida, postponed doubleheader. I freaking hate doubleheaders. And now for the people that actually got the number at 145, 150, Tennessee, now that's gone. Now, if you want to get back in bed with them, you're going to have to lay 2 bills, maybe more, to take Tennessee in the first game. And guess what? Because how these sports books operate, now you're not even going to be able to get the second game of the doubleheader. So you want to get Drew Beam in game 2? Good luck. You're not going to get it. Ridiculous, by the way. That needs to be fixed. Oh, disgusting. All right, next game. Vanderbilt at Georgia. I believe it's Bryce Cunningham again. It should be Leighton Finley matching up. Georgia, short money line, at home, favorite. Offense is pumping. I don't know how you don't go Georgia here.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Vanderbilt is so much worse on the road. Georgia's so much better at home. And those home road splits are getting pretty obvious at this point in the season. But yeah, it seems like Vandy's just both of these teams. That's the thing, is like Georgia at home is a completely different team and Vandy on the road is a completely different team. So then obviously you add both of those together. And I mean, the home SEC team here, I think Georgia wins the series. Goes
with the home team game 1 theory. which a lot of times has worked this year. And I feel like, John, if this was reversed and Georgia was at Vandy, I'd probably be looking at taking the Commodores in game one with Cunningham.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't if roles were reversed here, I think Vanderbilt wins 2 out of 3. But they're not. And Vandy, they have their best starters their best starter this year goes on Saturdays. So I think this is like the perfect scenario of Georgia game 1, Vandy game 2, Georgia game 3 type thing.
Well, do you know who's back for Georgia this weekend? Mr.
No.
Charlie Goldstein is back in action on the mound. He's pitching game 2, so he'll be back in action on Saturday. Should be Carter Holton versus Charlie Goldstein, a good lefty-lefty matchup. I think, we're going to be in for a treat. I definitely see Georgia winning the series here. I actually wouldn't even be surprised if Georgia takes games 1 and 2, and then Vandy comes in and salvages the series for game 3. But this is big for Georgia because right now, Georgia, they're still in top 25. They're like on that bubble of potentially hosting, maybe stealing the 6th seed to play at home in the regionals for the first round. That would be huge because as bad as Georgia's pitching can be, their hitting, especially in their own ballpark, turns it up to a different level. So, if you let Georgia get hot, I envy at a regional in Georgia. That would not be a lot of fun for a team trying to sneak their way out. All right, let's get to a little ACC love here. It's Georgia Tech at Clemson, laying $1.95 with Clemson. John, do you think the Tigers roll in game 1 and the series, even against a Georgia Tech team that's not necessarily that good, but they're kind of dangerous and they pick and choose when they decide to play?
Yeah, I think they do. My only worry here is we've seen Clemson a couple times come out just totally flat in game 1 and look terrible against it was against Miami where they did it. And against, I'm blanking on the other team that they did it against, but against Kennesaw State, where they just come out in the first game, they're absolutely awful. And then the next couple of games they play, back like Clemson again. So hopefully that doesn't happen because we have seen it happen a couple times this year, but I do think Clemson rolls in this series. Georgia Tech's a lot worse on the road, and Clemson's one of the best teams in the nation.
I think so too. A lot of the big upsets we've seen from the Yellow Jackets have been at home, and it's bizarre, man. Teams in college, especially, a lot of them have a tough time going on the road. I don't know if it's the environment, if it's the travel. I'm not sure if it's a combination of both, but we've seen a lot more success for teams at home. And aside from the obvious talent disparity, I think it really favors Clemson. You're getting a pretty good price here. I think 195 might be fair, but I would throw it in a money line parlay if you're looking to attack this game. All right. Our boy from Kentucky, here we go. We got the Arkansas Razorbacks laying in at 220 at Kentucky, fresh off a lost series at South Carolina. They blew the game 1 lead. They almost blew the game 2 lead. They did not win, and they did not win against Tennessee. So they finally started playing some actually strong competition, and it's not boded well for them. And now they have the pleasure of seeing Higgins Smith, the guy who has probably been the best pitcher in college baseball this year, come into their home ballpark for game 1. So, okay, here's the thing, right, John? Higgins Smith's on the mound, but this is a big number for a team that's been playing in Kentucky's caliber, a plus 170. How would you attack this? Are you throwing Arkansas in a parlay? Do you think maybe when the run lines come out, you're grabbing Kentucky on a run line? Like, where are you going with this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the reason this number is this big, right, is because of Higgins Smith. I wish there were first fives in college baseball because I do think, Arkansas hasn't lost a game behind Higgins Smith all year. I think there's also some crazy stat where there's only one of his games have hit over his total this entire year. So for whatever reason, both of those, I mean, not whatever reason what they've been winning, but for whatever reason, other teams have been pulling their starters and, pitching their backup guys and bullpen guys in the first game against Hagen Smith, and those games have still been staying under. So that's what I'm a little bit worried about. It's kind of like that mold of the South Carolina game against Hagen Smith the other week ago, where I think Arkansas was up 2-1. I think Arkansas ended up winning 2-1. They were up 2-1, and South Carolina had plenty of chances. They just couldn't get that run in. But I wouldn't be surprised if Kentucky is able to get that run in. I do think Kentucky's going to end up being favored tomorrow and the next day. And like, this is one where I might just honestly end up staying off altogether, but I might end up putting Arkansas on that parlay. I don't think I would do a run line with Kentucky. I think if I wanted to play Kentucky, I would just go with them straight on the money line here. And then also play like an under. But that's probably how I'd look at it. I think I'm definitely going to play the under here, though.
I like the under approach. Our boy Jake Fettner, he gave us a great note.
Yeah.
That I think the under in Arkansas games is like 24-6 on DraftKings in like their last 30 games over weekends here, something along those lines. But Hagen Smith, definitely an under machine. I feel like Kentucky is just being a little bit undervalued here. It's solely because of Hagen Smith, and you just know pitching as good as he's been, like one thing could happen because Arkansas just refuses to score for him. So if they only score 1 or 2 runs and he makes a mistake, or somebody in the field makes a defensive error, you just never know what could happen. But I am going with the money line parlay. I'm staying back in the horse that is Hagen. But Kentucky is definitely going to be a tough out in this year's. And of course, typical fashion to the luck that Kentucky's gotten this year, they've played basically all their really tough teams at home. Like that, every tough team they've had to play, they played at home basically. So this is a big one for them. And actually, believe it or not, this is going to be a big series for Kentucky, because if they lose this one, they're losing 3 series in a row to really good teams. That's going to hurt their RPI. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt their chances maybe to be a top 8 seed. Okay, though. So now we have Alabama Crimson Tide against the Mississippi State Bulldogs, my Bulldogs. They're at home. They're a short money line favorite. It's Greg Ferrone against Cal Steven. I'm hammering Mississippi State, baby. I think the Dogs take game 1.
Yeah, I'm with you too. And with Ferrone moved up to the Friday nights, you might end up looking at an under too, depending on what the total comes out as here. But yeah, I mean, Mississippi State at home, they're winning series left and right. Now they go back home where they're better. Alabama's a lot worse on the road. I think this is an easy at Mississippi State play here.
I think I'd probably double up on Saturday as well. You got Durangelo coming back on the mound. I feel like this is one where we can get Friday, Saturday, Mississippi State, take the series early, get it done, get it out of the way. And then, maybe if you lose Sunday with Ben Hess on the mound, which he's been pushed back, then I think that's probably the approach I would go. I think this is definitely an opportunity for Mississippi State to not fool around, get the series done, out of the way early, rack up the 2 wins that they need in order to keep climbing up those polls. And for a team like State, if they want to be hosting in the first week in June, they got to keep winning these series, because I'm already factoring in a loss at Arkansas. And I feel like the committee will understand that. They're going to factor that in. Having to go into Arkansas where basically, as good as Cal Steven is, he's got to go against Hagen Smith. Nobody's really been touching Hagen Smith this year. So, in essence, Mississippi State would basically have to win 2 games in a row in order to get that series. And by the way, the Razorbacks have a couple pretty good other starters in Brady Tiger and Mason Molina. So this series is very important, because then they, like I said, wrap it up with Mizzou, last series of the regular season in Starkville. All right. You guys have been waiting to hear what we have to say about Coastal Carolina. The Chants are at Southern Miss. I got to be honest, I hate to say it, but I think the chances for Coastal Carolina to win the conference regular season, the Sun Belt, are dead. unless for whatever reason they decide to rip off 9 straight conference victories. I don't really think they have a shot. They're a short dog at Southern Miss. Coastal's been way worse on the road. And are we fading Coastal until further notice, John?
Yeah, I think we've got to. I mean, they're coming off an 0-5 week with 3 of those games at home. They were playing some good teams, but Southern Miss is a good team too, and they're at home where they're really good. Nico Maz and Billy Oldham's a great 1-2 punch for Southern Miss. We see Southern Miss win these home series all the time. They've got so much experience doing it. And Coastal's, they're just falling off a cliff right now. They're not hitting and they're not pitching. So, I mean, until we see them show something, we've got to keep fading them.
Yeah, they haven't shown us a damn thing. And I feel like, and it's their first time going to Southern Miss. That's a good point, Joseph. Thank you. JS hitting us with a good little nugget there. I did see that on Coastal's Twitter page today. I mean, listen, it's going to be pitching advantage for Southern Miss. And the way Coastal's hitting has gone, they don't really have that much an advantage right now either. Like Southern Miss isn't a big, bad team of sluggers, but they have an offense that can score some runs. And if Coastal Carolina doesn't hit the way they're capable of, I don't know how they're going to win. This is the same team that lost at Appalachian State. Like that was a gimme. That's a gimme. You got to win at least 2, but that should have been a sweep. So now you have to go on the road to Southern Miss. I feel like this is a good price for the Eagles. And listen, at the end of the day, you're getting too good of a number here for the Golden Eagles to not be taking advantage of. I'll probably end up playing this. I haven't yet. The thing is, I hate betting games with teams that I have on my no bet list, and I put Coastal on that no bet list after last weekend. They joined like TCU, Iowa, Florida. There's a few teams on that list that I've accumulated, so it's hard for me to really sit there and say I want to bet the Chants right now. Staying in the conference, this is another big one because this could ultimately determine who wins the regular season in the Sun Belt. That's the Raging Cajuns at Troy. Troy, being the home team, is the very slight, basically coin flip favorite. I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like it's hard for me to say the Raging Cajuns don't have the pitching advantage because they do. Maybe Troy's got the offensive edge. Where do you see game 1 going?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, I think this line's pretty spot on, to be honest. We could see either two. I think the only guaranteed thing here is that one team will win one game. I really don't think we'll get a sweep either way. I think we'll at least have one of the teams win one game. But, I mean, this is going to be a great matchup. I'm really interested to see. If I had to make a choice, I would go with Troy at home, but I think it's a pretty good line.
Yeah, I haven't made a decision, to be honest. I don't know if I'm going to play this game because I really do have this as a coin flip. I really think this could go either way. And, the problem is you're not going to get much value on the run line. I suppose maybe I'd like to see what kind of movement comes out before the opening pitch. Maybe if Troy bloats out to like minus 140, minus 150, and we get a little plus money on the Raging Cajuns, then maybe. But I have to determine if Andrew Herman is throwing for ULL first. But, I'm not really scared of the Troy starting staff. I think they can be taken advantage of. But, TBD on that. Okay, a few more here. We got Oklahoma State at Texas. Texas has been playing really well. This is kind of what they do around this time of the year. They start heating up. Just when you think they're out, they pull you back in, a la Al Pacino and The Godfather. Do you think OK State takes this game, or is it Texas?
I do. So Texas has been winning series. They've been playing really well, but they've still lost. I believe it's 7 straight opening games of a series now. 6 or 7, I want to say. So they've even switched around the rotation. LeBaron Johnson's been pushed back to Sundays. I mean, he hasn't been pitching well whatsoever. But I mean, I do think Oklahoma State goes on the road and wins this first game. Maybe Texas wins the next 2 games and keeps, stays hot and wins the series. But I'm going to keep riding that trend where Texas loses the opening game of a series.
I'll be honest. I can't pinpoint Oklahoma State in the right way. Every time I bet them, they lose. Arizona and Oklahoma State are the two teams I cannot get on the right side of. So I think for me, I'm staying away from this. I feel like, this is a good Big 12 matchup. Texas, I don't really know if they're going to have enough juice to win the conference regular season. OK State, I think, is still in relatively solid shape. But, for me, I don't think I could get behind either team. Maybe if I see, for instance, Texas take game 1 and then I go back to Oklahoma State game 2, something along those lines, possibly. But I don't know, man. A lot of Big 12 baseball has been very sloppy this year. There's a lot of inconsistencies. It's hard to get a beat on, from my perspective at least. So I haven't relatively played a lot of Big 12 baseball for most of the years, other than a few select spots. So right now it's a pass for me. Let's head out west. We got the Oregon Ducks slightly favored at Utah. Utah has been a very pleasant surprise this year. They have a stud on the mound for Friday nights, and his name is Bryson Van Sickle. Got to go Utah here. Home opener against Oregon, good team. This is going to be a really well-fought contest. I don't know. I don't think I could take Oregon here. I think this is a Utah play for me, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is another pretty good line, to be honest. This might be one where we go Utah game 1 with Bryson Van Sickle, and then Oregon game 2 and 3. Just because Oregon seems to always win series. I think the only series that they've lost in the Pac-12 so far was last weekend against Oregon State. But, I mean, they lost 2 out of 3 games over the weekend, but then they kind of evened up the series midweek when they got that. I mean, the game at the minor league park with the game that wasn't on the road. So, I mean, this might be one where we go Utah game 1, like I said, Oregon game 2 and 3. But once again, I think this is pretty close to a spot on line.
I mean, I feel like just the way Bryson Van Sickle has been throwing, it's hard to not consistently back him. And he's throwing at home. This is a guy that's just kind of came out of nowhere this year to be one of the better pitchers in Power 5 baseball. 2.62 ERA. His last start at UCLA, or at home to UCLA, 7 1/3, 2 earned. The start before that against Washington, 6 1/3, 3 earned. Complete game shutty, no walks against Arizona State. He had one really rough outing in CSUN, 6 innings, 6 earned. But outside of that, he's been great. He really has. Only got 15 walks on the year and 65 1/3. I feel like he's been a guy that is necessary to back right now. And I feel like even against an Oregon team that is good, Van Sickle he's kind of too good to pass up as this kind of favorite at home, or underdog at home. All right, the final game that we have here is a goodie. We got A&M at LSU. A&M's actually a very short favorite at -130. The Tigers have won the last couple series, so maybe the market's kind of warming up to them again. But, dude, it's Ryan Prager on the mound for A&M. He's been great this year. And LSU sticking with Gage Jump in that Friday roll. I don't see how you don't take A&M at this price.
Yeah, I love A&M here. This line wasn't on the books the last couple hours. I don't know if they're trying to save money from coming in, but I mean, I love A&M here, especially with Holman not going until until Saturday. And Texas A&M has been winning series all season. I don't see why this changes against an LSU team that hasn't been winning series all season. That's pretty much what they've been doing, is just losing series. So I've got to go A&M on the short money line.
This is actually a 2-unit play for me. A&M in game 1s especially have been really good this year. Ryan Prager has probably been one of the most improved pitchers that we've seen in 2024. I mean, there's several ones, but Ryan Prager is a guy that he's not really that well known. He's not a guy like Chase Burns that made the jump, but we know who Chase Burns is. Ryan Prager deserves a lot of props. The kid's been unbelievable this season. He's definitely boosted his draft stock. He's been the horse and truly the only anchor in that A&M rotation. If A&M makes a run, it's going to be because he's one of the key pieces that's held down the fort on Friday nights. Change the rotation, though. They put Justin Lampkin back in. He was really good on Sundays, struggled the last month. They took him out last week, and now he's getting put back in for Saturday's game. And they have TBD Sunday. So Tanner Jones, the typical Saturday guy, has been removed. I mean, I feel like it's A&M, hammer, 2-unit, maybe 3-unit play on Friday. And then we come back with Luke Holman on Saturday and LSU. And then Sunday is more of a TBD.
Yeah, I think A&M definitely at least wins this series. If they're going to stay minus 130 this whole series, I might as well just bet them the entire time. But I do think that they'll go up a little bit. To be honest, they could be underdogs tomorrow. But I think that would be I don't think that would be correct. I mean, Holman hasn't been as dominant lately, and their bullpen, LSU's bullpen's very vulnerable. So depends on what lines we get here. But I definitely think A&M wins the series.
I find it interesting, to be honest with you, about this series, that we could see that 130 A&M favored tomorrow, and then Saturday Holman's on the mound. By now they know who he is, and who knows, they might put LSU as like a minus 145, 150 favorite on Saturday with Holman on the mound, because they've been very they've been very heavy to back when guys like Holman have pitched. And he hasn't looked the same as he did early in the season, that's for sure, but he's still been pretty good. So I'm curious to see that. But if we're still getting A&M plus 120, you're not getting Texas A&M at an underdog price almost ever this year. So I would still probably look to fade Luke Holman, because even if he has a good start, that LSU bullpen could absolutely implode.
Yeah, I completely agree.
All right, John, are you looking at any other games for Friday?
Not off the top of my head, to be honest. Maybe like a California money line on the road. Who are they playing? I forgot who they're playing, but I was looking at California plus money. I think it's plus 100. USC on the road. Yeah, I think that would be probably my other look. But other than that, we covered all the games that I was liking.
What about Oregon State minus 250 at Washington State? It should be Aiden May, Grant Taylor. We talked about the struggles that Oregon State has had on the road. It's very baffling, to be honest. And a guy like Grant Taylor, who's been great this year, you're giving us almost 200. Well, Grant Taylor at home against a team that does not play that well on the road. It's tempting. And I feel like this line could get bigger. So if you could get Washington State possibly at plus 2.5, maybe if it gets big enough to 3.5, which I don't know if it will, I feel like that's something of interest. Washington State's bullpen is terrible as well, but it's something that's food for thought.
Yeah, I think that one's one where I would, if I had to make a play, I would go Washington State. I would lean, the home dog there, but I also don't totally trust Washington State. So I'm probably just laying off it altogether and not going to have Oregon State in any parlay or anything.
I was going to say the same thing. No parlays for me there. Ooh, Crutch, little sneak play from Crutch. Love it. He likes St. John's on the money line at home against Creighton. That's my alma mater, baby. I'm a 4-year Johnny. It's good to see the Johnnies having their first big year since I graduated 100 years ago. St. John's might be one of the last 4 teams in. I don't know how far they will go, but it's good to see them back in. Creighton's a tough team, but playing in the confines of their home in Queens, I feel like St. John's is a solid play. I don't bet Big East baseball unless maybe it's UConn, but not this year. But St. John's. Not bad. Not bad. I appreciate you repping the alma mater. Okay, one more that I actually do have. What do you think about South Carolina at Mizzou? The Cox laying 2 bills.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I would maybe put them in a parlay, but Missouri's a completely different team at home. I mean, they're not good overall, but when they do upset teams, it's at home. I think they'll win at least one game of the series. But I do think South Carolina should win the series, so that might just be one I stay away from.
I feel like South Carolina should win the series. Definitely a trap spot. Teams that seem I don't know what it is. I don't know what kind of magic witchcraft they do, but every time a team goes into Mizzou, it seems like they always have trouble. Like always. Basically every team Mizzou has played at home. Let's look this up real quick because I'm actually curious. We know for a fact that they kicked the shit out of Florida. Florida was a complete no-show against Mizzou like a month ago. Give me a sec here. Let's see. So they played a lot of these teams on the road, but so they took one from Kentucky, but they took one from Kentucky on Saturday, but they lost a one-run game on Sunday, and they took them to extras on Friday. They lost 9-4, but it was an 11-inning game, so that game had to be close. So they played Kentucky really tight. Vanderbilt, that was in Nashville. Florida, they beat. Georgia, that was in Athens. But they played Georgia pretty tough. Even though they lost 2 out of 3, the Sunday game was kind of close. It was 10-7. LSU, they took one. But LSU actually took 2 or 3. And they had to go to Tennessee. So, but it seems like, they play pretty tough when they're at home. But I think ultimately South Carolina probably loses one. Just not sure which one that is. I feel like Friday night could be a little bit tricky. That's why I left South Carolina off my card completely. All right, John. Give us one of your free plays here. I know you tweet them out, but you got to give the people what they want, man.
Yeah. Let's see. What did I have written down? I really like that Texas A&M game. I didn't have that lineup when I was looking at games, but what else do I have written down? So I really like Southern Miss on the money line. Maybe a game that we didn't go over that I really like is I think Illinois on the money line at home against Ohio State. Ohio State does have a solid ace, but then after that, it really falls off. And Illinois has been red hot. I think they definitely win that series. Short money line at home, I think, is a good look.
Yeah, those dudes might actually win the Big Ten, which I don't know how that's even allowed in this day and age, but somehow it is. All right, so right now my full card is Texas A&M money line 2-unit play, Mississippi State money line, Georgia money line, Utah money line. We're parlaying for 2 units, Florida State and Arkansas. It's short, it's sweet, and hopefully it's a winner. John, thank you so much for taking the time to do this podcast with us. I know all of our listeners appreciate it. I know I appreciate it. And it was fantastic, man. Love doing this every week.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you for having me on as always, man.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Best of luck this weekend with your plays. I will be back tomorrow. Don't go anywhere. I'll see you tomorrow night. Everybody, let's cash some of these winners. And let's get the Miami Hurricanes home. They blew the opportunity to close out BYU in the top of the 9th. I'm kind of sweating this one out because Tennessee was part of my parlay here, and that game has actually been postponed, which completely sucks, and it's bullshit, and I'm tired of these rainouts. Rain shouldn't be allowed in the month of May. But anyway, we'll see you tomorrow night. Best of luck. Peace.